Hello world. There's some games where the biggest discussion they inspire is which version is best. A lot rarer with games coming out today, they are far more similar across platforms, but it used to vary quite widely. You could end up with a fundamentally different experience under the same name and have to pick a favourite for yourself. Sometimes there isn't consensus, like when people claim the best version of Aladdin is anything other than the Mega Drive/Genesis version. Sometimes one version of the game is an obvious dumpster fire, like the first version of Resident Evil 4 on PC. That would be the one that shipped without lighting. Or mouse support. They only fixed one of those. And then sometimes, just sometimes, there's a version of the game which gets buried. Not entirely buried, I can find playthroughs of it on YouTube, but if you're looking for information on Metal Marines, chances are you'll see the SNES version first, which is fine. The fact that I'm doing this video explicitly about the PC version might give away which one I prefer, but I'm not surprised by this. Console games were always a bit more mainstream, even strategy titles, and on top of that, the PC version was made for Windows 3.1, which is rarely remembered with fondness, if it's remembered at all. If you made a game for that OS, it was almost destined to be forgotten. Mind you, the game also ran on Windows 95, and I've had it working as late as Windows XP. It has to be 32-bit Windows though. The game uses a 16-bit executable that 64-bit Windows wants nothing to do with. And in case that's not enough version talk for you, there were actually two PC releases, regular and Master Edition. I'll be showing the Master Edition for two reasons: the voice acting and the fact you can resize the battle windows horizontally instead of just vertically. I'm jumping ahead a bit here, but this is what the battle screen looks like. There's two big windows that you can move and resize, I'll explain what they do later, and the regular edition only let you make them taller or shorter for some reason. You can tell this was made for Windows 3.1 because it actually tries to utilise the Windows graphics interface. Perhaps it seemed like a good idea because this was also new at the time. I'm not familiar with software development under Windows 2, but considering that Windows 2 looked like this, I can see why folk would be like, oh wait, this is actually usable, let's try that. Surprisingly common for Windows 3.1 games actually. Castle of the Winds and Dare to Dream in particular spring to mind with their multiple windows. Anyway, history lesson over, why don't I cover the story? That sounds sensible. In the year 2127, the world lives in the shadow of the antimatter war, which was bad, probably, I don't know. The United Earth Empire is at war with Zorgoth the Great, who has set his sights on Earth after conquering all of the space colonies. As a commander, if the default on the name entry screen is anything to go by, of the United Earth Empire, you do your part in repelling the space bastards and saving the planet. At least I think that's the story. When I first looked this up again, I was wondering where all this story came from because the PC version started out like this.
Sergeant Bowman, Intelligence Advisor, reporting for duty. I've been sent by Allied Forces headquarters to assist you through your training mission. You should be seeing 4 windows right now. I am displayed in your tactical command window.
And it just went on from there, tutorial talk and nothing else. That was it. The help file didn't give anything away, I never had a paper manual, so this was all unknown to me. Most of that initial story burst actually came from the SNES intro. It's not a complex or nuanced story in any case. War happened, evil empire attack, defenders of the earth a bit miffed, bunch of enemy commanders in varying stereotypicalness, that's all you need to know. Not that I found it incredibly necessary, because something about the gameplay grabbed me. I don't know if I can actually explain why, because the more I explain it, the weirder it sounds. Remember those two battle screens? One is a view of your island base, the other is of your opponent's. You start a mission by placing your your bases, destroy all the enemy bases to win. Simple enough. Once the bases are down, you can start building up your island with this fine list of buildings. You've got the missile, which puts the heart on anything in a 3x3 grid and reveals what your enemy built near the explosion. If it's not shot down by an interceptor missile, which will try and destroy any not interceptor missiles that fly near it. They'll also fire at any metal marines you send over, damaging and potentially destroying all 50 foot of the bastards what named this game. If the marines land, however, the interceptors and anything else in the vicinity are gonna get it. Unless that anything else is an armoured gun pod, because, well, we can guess what their purpose is. Any metal marines near where an enemy metal marine lands will also join the fight. So you can see there's this rock, paper, scissors-esque circle of death thing going on, except for the antimatter missile. It's not easy or quick to build, but once you manage it, this happens. Yep. Those buildings didn't even blow up, that shit was vaporized. Those are your key tools for beating the missions, but that's only 6 out of the 13. You've also got the radar dish, which make interceptor missiles shoot better, the camouflage structure to disguise your bases as houses even though they're in the middle of nowhere or interrupt a road for some reason, and act as a bit of armour. The decoy base, which is just like a real base apart from the everything. There's the active minefield I never use, it probably hurts metal marines a bit. The war administration headquarters, which increases your monies per second. The factory that lets you build stuff in a less slow way, and the energy plant, which increases your energy per second. Energy is the stuff you spend to launch regular missiles, marines, and antimatter missiles, by the way. So now we know what we can build, how can we actually use it? You're gonna love this one. It's the Windows 3.1-iest thing I can think of, aside from having to set your colour depth to 256 colours to run certain games even though it was a higher beforehand. Seriously, what happened? Why you do this? To fire a missile into enemy territory, you click and drag it over to the other window. Same with the Metal Marines, click and drag to where you want shit wrecked. I once had to spend 5 full minutes convincing my friend that you right clicked and dragged the mouse to attack in Daggerfall, so fuck knows how people are gonna react to this. In fact, you can even drag files and folders onto the battlefield to spawn a folder, which explodes. Okay, programmer hat on for a second. I'm assuming that since they had to detect dragging rockets from one window to the other, they had to account for the fact that people might drag something else. It'll be using the same API calls that folder dragging would use. If they try to use the data of a folder as if it were game tile data, it's like ramming a square peg in a round hole basically. The game would probably crash. Hell, might have taken the whole OS with it. Crashes were not uncommon for Windows 3.1 is what I'm saying. This brings me to one of the major drawbacks of the game. Not the click dragging itself, I'm clearly old and beaten down enough to accept that. Not only can you only perform one attack at a time, and with the metal mofos that means waiting until they die or run out of targets, but your window won't even update until the missile lands. And you have to wait longer than you think to make another attack. Journey, missile explosion, target explosions. Then you can attack again, every single time. Granted, you can reduce the amount of animation shown, but you're still waiting for quite a lot of playtime. That's one advantage the SNES version does have actually, you can set off multiple attacks at once. What would have been good is if you could pause the game, plan out these attacks, unpause and just have it all play out. And yeah, I prefer the PC version over the SNES. Those missile attacks are practically their own little cutscenes in the SNES version too, but the fact that it doesn't hard cut away to them pushes the PC interpretation to the top for me. That, and not only can I see more of my island, depending on what resolution you have set, but I don't have to play a strategy game with a controller. It's like using stone tools by comparison. There's another drawback to the click and drag nature of the combat. If you want to pan your view, you need to click and drag either water or a hill, otherwise the game thinks you're making an attack. I mean, really? If you click and drag on a missile or a metal marine, sure, you don't want your view scrolling just because you wanted to make a boom, but you couldn't figure out that I don't want to attack the enemy island with a headquarters? I'm trying to defend you, game, and don't tell me to use scroll bars. This isn't 1994. Actually, from your perspective, it probably is, never mind. It only occurred to me when I sat down to write this review what the combat reminded me of. Battleships. You're faced with a blank island, you need to find and destroy the bases without getting blown up yourself. Difference being you only have 3 lives and you can lose your ability to shoot if you either run out of energy or your missiles go splat. Half the time you're launching missiles not to attack, but for reconnaissance. You can do the same with the Marines, but you're probably just going to launch them into a group of gun pods and not get their comparatively expensive asses back. Actually, if you launch Marines directly onto a building, they'll nope straight back. Something about uneven territory, I don't know. Fair enough if you don't know anything was there, fog of war and all that, but I don't know why they wouldn't just say, "We saw a building there earlier, this is a pointless move, you tit." We're not talking about Command and Conquer fog either. You could fire 2 missiles a minute apart and see something new being built when you weren't looking. And by looking, I mean bombing their tits off. If you want them metally Marines to be useful, you pretty much need to build them up so they can survive more than one gun pod. Yeah, that's another thing you can do, build certain units up. Building up Marines raises their attack and defense with the added benefit of making them gold and making them not useless. Building up missiles fires 2 instead of 1. At worst, it doubles your chances of hitting the target. At best, it hits twice, and some buildings need to be hit twice before they'll boom, so that's only 1 launch for your boom. That's pretty good. And building up interceptor missiles seems to still only fire once, but better? I think they hit the Metal Marines harder, so there's a better chance they'll be destroyed. That's the point of that. Now, I usually take a glass cannon approach in games, so in Metal Marines I get bombed a lot. You don't have many defences, you get bombed, and not a surprise. At least until I found and wrecked all their offense anyway. And whilst it's not a perfect tactic, it did me alright until the final mission where either you basically have to use Marines or fires in missiles constantly and pray to RNGs that enough of them land. Unless the first antimatter missile does this. In which case you basically have to restart. By the way, that first shot occurs within 30 seconds of starting the mission. Safe to say your opponent followed the Boy Scout motto, but when I finally beat that mission, oh boy, that is a sense of closure I rarely get, and also should probably be getting from something that actually matters. On the other hand, it means you can go back and use all the new tactics you learned from the beginning, all those missions where all my shit got blown up and I had to win with single missiles dotted around the island, or nuke the ever-loving fuck out of the island in the second mission, to the point where every part of it was blackened apart from his one base, even this tiny useless island off to the side, and even the edges. Then I wanted to let him build up a little bit before nuking him every minute until I got bored and sent the Marines. I am not a good person sometimes. Aside from blatant squash matches like that one, there's a delicate balance you have to maintain with this game. You need to find the enemy bases and destroy them, but you need to also scout out the island to see what's there first. If there's too many interceptors, you'll need to send a marine. If there's gun pods, you'll need to weaken those first. If there's both, then you might need to pare it down with built up missiles or marines, and you need to balance your defences while you're at it. A wall of gun pods does nothing against a barrage of missiles, and interceptors are helpless against a marine. All of this with limited resources, which aren't too easy to increase. That headquarters increases your monies by 1 per second, and they cost 75 each. I don't know if it matters which enemy commander you're facing, whether you're up against almost Cockney, almost Australian Bill Garland,
Welcome to your final battle.
screen-kicking fanatic Joan Ryle,
You stupid little runt. I'll get you for that.
Camp German Luftentschwalz,
That does it! Now take this!
or Nikolai I. Zorgov the Great himself, who loves to count apparently. The difficulty appears to be entirely based on the mission number. You can tell the AI is mostly used to operating with an established base, because watching it trying to build itself back up is an exercise in complete nonsense, at least in the early missions. Building gun pods and interceptors in random locations, saving up 75mm for a factory before anything else, they're a bit daft. Something I forgot to mention is that if a marine gets destroyed, you can build a new one at the empty hangar, cheaper than a new hangar and saves you some space. The AI does not seem to know this. Also daft. The difficulty seems to come entirely from how the enemy island is set up at the start of the mission, and yet it does get bloody hard. I'm trying to penetrate their defences before they go ahead and send over gold marines and stomp all of my everything, forcing me into guerrilla tactics to finish the mission. Actually, that's a pretty regular tactic. I should build gun pods. We've got another one of those games that's hard to recommend, yet I love it enough to set up a Windows 3.1 install under DOSBox to play it. Mostly because I couldn't be arsed setting up a Windows XP virtual machine again and had DOSBox installed already. There's a big barrier to entry before you even start playing Metal Marines, and then you have to deal with how clunky the game is. And it undeniably is. That one attack at a time rule is tied with your window doesn't update until the animation is over for biggest fuckness award. It's a unique game experience that I can't promise is worth the effort to run, but I love it, and I think it's full of enough weird, unique and interesting stuff to warrant talking about it for as long as I have. Which is quite a while now, come to think of it. Should I just end it here? Yeah, probably. Oh, one more thing before I go. There's a Pig Latin mode. Do you know of another game with a Pig Latin mode? Bet your favourite game doesn't have a Pig Latin mode. Yeah.